Welcome to Nourishing the Mother, an inspired conversation space between Bridget Wood and Julie Tenner on the journey of motherhood through the common thread of parenting, relationship, and sexuality as a path to consciousness.
We keep our conversations honest, our experiences real, and our philosophies exploratory. We believe that in order to raise incredible humans, we first have to raise ourselves. We know that in order to rock the family, you've got to nourish the mother. If you are here, you care about paving a path of conscious and intentional motherhood, connected with yourself and your gifts, and also illuminating your children in theirs so we may raise more whole humans who can impact this world in a more humane way.
If you desire to integrate your learnings practically and supportively, head on over to bridgetwood.life or julietenner.love to go deeper. And for all live-streamed pre-release podcasts and all our free content, head over to our free Facebook group, Nourishing the Mother with Bridget Wood and Julie Tenner. We are Julie Tenner and Bridget Wood, and we are so grateful you're here.
Hello and welcome to Nourishing the Mother. I'm Bridget Wood.
And I'm Julie Tenner. And today's podcast is When Intensive Mothering Holds You Back.
I feel like this is going to be a really juicy conversation.
I feel like that too. And also, I just want to say, we see our purpose or our part in your motherhood journey as how do we offer you an opportunity to think wider and in ways that you never have before and create expansion in your thinking mind, in your belief system, and therefore in your reality. So whenever we bring you topics like this, they're a little edgy because they're a little uncomfortable because they sit just a little outside of the ways we're really comfortable thinking.
I love that you've prefaced it with that because, like you and I riff on this kind of stuff often. But it can be really edgy and uncomfortable because it's identity challenging when we have these conversations, when we go, what if there's this other way of seeing it? And what if actually like your feelings are your feedback, right? Like it's not actually the truth. They're all here to give you a pathway to think differently.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, and I just had such a big moment of feeling also just all of those moments in our life where, you and I have spoken about so many times before that whatever we condemn, we breed, attract, or become. And I'm constantly reminded, both in my own personal journey and in witnessing the lives of those that we work with, is how often we're brought into our own humility by virtue of meeting the very thing that we've said is wrong.
Yes, we kind of come careering into it and going,
And sometimes because we get so much of that thing. So, attachment is the best, being, totally, absorbed in my child is the best way to live. And then you get a Velcro baby who does not give you 5 seconds of breathing space. You get so much of what you want so that you create the pushback to bring you into equilibration. Or you literally breed your children, attract through the world other people to reflect something to you and, grate to you in those ways that you say you're not, or you literally become the thing that you're blind to, that you are, the thing that you're judging. And I just think all of us will continuously end up in those places. So when we're looking at a topic like this, that's what I had this like reminder of. Yeah, because this is challenging identity, because part of our identity is them and us. It's a separation. There's me and what's right, and there's them and what's wrong. So part of this conversation is also going to be doing a little bit of that.
Softening those edges. Yes. So when we were talking about this before we hit record, we realized that one of the big red flags or indicators that maybe intensive mothering is holding you back is if you're finding yourself in this place of almost continuous low-level resentment of your life, of your children that you probably don't feel comfortable admitting, of your partner if you have one, or just of your circumstances of being so immersed in mothering.
Yes, but also when I say sometimes not low level.
Sometimes it's like ragey. Sometimes it's like massive discontent.
Sometimes it literally looks like, I think I'm going to be really zen today. And then I fly off the handle at my kids, and then I'm back to being zen again. And then I'm like, you're driving me nuts, but I can't leave you. You're driving me nuts, but I'm supposed to be here. And it's this like push-pull that can be actually quite exacerbated.
Yeah, that's a really good emphasis too, because you're right. And then you're like, whoa, what just happened? Or you're like, this is not who I want to be. Like, and we confront these parts and we're like, hang on a sec, this is not the parent that I set out to be. So you and I certainly see that as like not wrong, not something to judge, but something to get really, really curious about, because that resentment is feedback. It's to help us see, maybe those projections or those idealisms or those fantasies we had about this life we now have, are asking us to be really honest with ourselves about if this is what we really want, if we are actually living in alignment anymore. Which is like, sometimes a conversation that we don't want to have with ourselves because we have an attachment to the identity that we've created that says we are all these things and this is what we do. This is what a good mother does.
And this is the belief system that I have up until this point staunchly held onto, which has created my identity. And if I no longer really think those things as viscerally as I have, what does that mean? Who does that mean I am? Will people judge me?
Yeah. Or do I have to face the deepest judgments I've ever had, which for many women will trickle back in some way to their mother? Like, my mother did this, so I should be able to too. Or my mother, did a terrible job and now I'm looking like her. Right? Like in the mother wound work that I do with women, it's one of the fundamental questions which I actually put to my social media just recently was, I want you to actually identify in what ways did your mother love you? Because in doing that and in looking for where the love was, we get to actually see that it looks like so many different things and not in the exact way that we necessarily think that we needed it or wanted it or want it now. But actually it came from what was authentic to them. And so what if in this, crossroads that we perhaps find ourselves in, what if we're now asking ourselves to give our children love in a way that's different to how we thought it was going to be? And in asking that question, are we willing to look for what those things could be without feeling like we're not going to be good enough? Or we can't meet them.
So when we come back to today's topic, which is when intensive mothering holds you back, another way to say this would be when we use motherhood to hide behind.
Yeah.
Or
this is actually a really conscious question I had to ask myself when I was deciding about whether I'd have a third or not. Was am I really choosing this as a really conscious choice because I deeply yearn for it and want this and want to expand our family? Or is there a part of me that actually wants to hide longer in motherhood? And I really think it's easier than facing some of my biggest fears.
I did that with Jade. I 100% did that with Jade. That's like, I could sort out the mess that is my career and, face all of those edges of being seen in the world and deciding what to do and up-leveling financially and career-wise, or I could have another baby and worry about that in 2 years' time.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a really real thing that I think goes through with kids. Because it's a really legitimate thing, right? Like we're expected to intensively mother in the early years. It's really socially acceptable.
Yes. So we want to hit you up with a few ways to just expand your thinking on this and just see if there's something that lands for you. It may not be all of the things, and that is cool, but it may be one of the things, and that gives you a sense of more empowerment so that you're living a life that is in ever greater alignment. knowing the identity you currently have has been created from all of the beliefs that you have up until now held, and from all of the ways that you have up until now thought. And growth will mean that the way you think and what you believe and perceive will change, which means the very life you've created right now that feels really comfy at some point will build resentment because it stops being so comfy because you have changed.
You have changed. And also, like, the higher part of you, like, you're designed to grow, right? And we don't grow in too much comfort. So we're also, the edginess or the discontent is also purposeful for us to break through our own bullshit, really.
Yeah, but it's really hard, right? When we've held one way of like staying at home with my kids is the best thing for them. And then all of a sudden we're finding these pieces of us that are like, ooh, I don't know. Is it? Because there's part of me that thinks maybe it's not. And then, God, if I do, then what does that mean? Like, so much. It's really big. So we're going to begin here. When we say that children have really big needs, so we can't ... insert the thing that you're holding yourself back in your life from.
Yeah.
My children have such big needs, I can't leave them. My children have such big needs. We never get time to have sex or a relationship, or I could never have time away. My children need me so much. I can't.
Make time for exercise, focus on that area of my health that I know needs attention, right? Consider studying, consider, a job that I might really like to apply for, or the business I really want to start. Right.
So this is hard because our top values will always consume the time that we have unless we are consciously allotting time. I had this conversation, actually, I'll put it in here because it's only life relevant to this point, is I say constantly to all of my clients and to social media and to my children, you do not find time. You do not find time. Time does not happen upon you. You create time.
Yeah.
The end. So my son is having, as you all know, a dig deep year this year. And one of those conversations is about how hard does he want to try academically. So we had parent teachers the other night. And one of his VC teachers said, Heath, I just think you're going to have to find a bit more time. And I went, no, he'll need to create the time. And she went, yeah, find the time. I said, no, he won't find the time.
Semantics is very important here. Create is different to find.
He's standing right here. I'm like, no, you say to him, oh, babes, just find the time. Well, he's not going to, because he's passive in that process. He's waiting for time to happen to him. Versus saying to him, create it. Do something about it. Lock out that time, say it's for that, and you will do that thing. This is why you give tasks to busy people and they get it done, because they are masters at creating time.
True that.
Yeah. How did I get onto that?
No, but
when we say we can't, this is my point. When we say we can't, you can, because our top values will always consume the time we have, and needs and lists and jobs literally never end. So you can literally be ruled by your life and know that you will always be consumed by house and work and kids and needs and emotions, and whatever it is will always consume your time, always, without question. So the only thing is that you living your best life? And if it's not, where are you creating time to do the other stuff? Because or else you're passively waiting for it to happen to you. And is your life being led?
Which is really just other people leading you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. Are you leading you and your life, or are other people leading your life and then you're hating them for it?
And you're hating them for it is really just, I mean, this is a bit metaphysical, but really it is, the resentment is toward them is actually a veiled resentment towards yourself, that you've allowed that person to take up that time. And this includes our children, right? Like, if we don't practice holding the boundaries that honor us and our values beyond meeting their needs and serving them and helping them thrive, then we will become resentful to them. We are designed to, so that we come back into connection with ourselves and so that we lead ourselves.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So when we say our children have such big needs that we can't, I think there's also a self-fulfilling prophecy in that. So you all know my journey with Ola. If you're a new listener, she's my third child who I've had a huge journey with of additional needs. And when I was pregnant with her, was having an incredibly conscious conception, conscious pregnancy, conscious birth, like fucking wanted to be so present to every single moment of her creation. You know, when I said before that you breed, attract, or become the very thing that, you know, you judge in order to create boundaries, well, she still sits as my biggest lesson, because I stopped my entire life in order to create her. And then she became my whole life, and I could not do anything but focus and create her. Like, there's a self-fulfilling prophecy there, right?
It's just so, like, so profound whenever I think about that kind of full circle.
Isn't it? Yeah. And I had such on a pedestal consciousness, presentness, being utterly available for every moment of everything for our children. Like, that's who I was in that evolution of my identity, that I got pushed so fully into that experience that I finally saw the drawbacks.
Yeah, and
I wasn't seeing them.
But you didn't see it until you were like,
dying, dead, down the very bottom of the well. Yeah,
like just like coming, we barely come up for air, right?
Yeah, exactly. I literally had to kill off my identity before I was willing to let it go.
Yeah, fucking brutal.
Oh, so brutal. So brutal. So I really do understand that there are children who have more needs and higher needs than other children. That's truth.
Yeah, absolutely.
There are children that have all types of different needs and all types of sensitivities, and some of those do require more active participation on a parenting journey than others. There's just different kids. Because there's different wirings and there's different nervous systems and there's different life paths. So truth, I can't compare myself to another mother because her children are completely different to mine. Mothering is not just mothering.
No, gosh, there's so much nuance that we don't get to or make space for when we just think it's just mothering, right?
Right. Yeah, exactly. So I do really understand that the needs can be so big and seem like they are life dependent for your children on you. And yet I also know it to be true that they are vastly better when those needs are spread across the many rather than the one.
Yeah. And but the challenge for some mothers is that we come up against this perfect mother myth, which Dr. Sophie Brock talks about, one of those being that only the biological mother can provide the best care for the child, which on some level, some of us have really deeply internalized. And so if that's true, then I need to put myself second and I need to put every need of this child first because I am the best at that for this child. And yet, as you're saying, what if part of the revillaging that so many mothers yearn for is accepting that we don't need to be everything and nor should we try to be everything. And that spreading those needs across a variety of different people, whether they be family or practitioners or, you know, various kinds of therapy or, you know, other influential people in our life, how is that, you know, really actually supportive for your child?
Yeah, totally. We're just jumping in to let you know what is happening in the worlds of bridgetwood.life and julietanner.love in case there's a little opening for you to jump in and expand your life a little bit deeper. So what's happening in your world, Bridge?
It's Disrupt, Revealing the Mother Wound. So it is a 4-module course supported by integration calls and a women's circle to really help you reveal the ways in which the mother wound is impacting your life right now and your parenting and provide you more freedom and spaciousness in your mothering journey. And you, Jules?
is Queen School. So Queen School is now a online course with 4 full modules that you are self-paced and work your way through, combined with 12 months of really stretching that out as I help you really integrate, embody, and move through the blocks so that you can literally become Queen School in your life. So Queen School is all about connection, pleasure, sensuality, magnetic communication, feminine energy, and embodiment with me over now a beautifully integrated 12-month experience. So you can find out more at julietenner.love. So I get when we say children have big needs, so we can't. Yes, in seasons, that is true. Our children definitely have seasons where they're having more struggle and they need us closer. Yes. But if this is how you are living your life over a long period of time, then there's something else going on there. So just look into it.
Yeah. And just, like huge, like, I mean, you're the first person to offer like the depth of holding and warmth to those edges, right? Like to that, could there possibly be a different way to see this that doesn't feel like I'm carrying the whole world on my shoulders right now?
Yeah. So is there anything you want to add to that? It needs to be me identity piece for you?
Well, I think that laboring the point on that identity piece is big, right? So if my child doesn't need me so much, then where's my worth? How, can I be in that uncomfortable place of, seeing my value beyond all that I provide and give and nurture? And, that may require, us to look at where I'm called to build more skills, where I'm called to value myself in ways I haven't actually before, where I literally look for permission and how can I take up more space. And that, that is confronting some of the depths of, women's wounding, right? Is that waiting for permission? Is that sense that, I wait till I'm asked and I can't take up too much space because it's not it's not allowed for me.
Totally. So one of the other considerations that Bridgie and I certainly, I mean, you and I bounce stuff like this off each other all of the time, is when we're perceiving that our children are better off when we are the primary caregivers or we're the ones that provide the vast majority of focus, care, attention, space, holding, emotional meeting, that our children are better off. And therefore, when we don't as mothers provide that children are worse off. And so part of breaking our fantasy, which we're going to come crashing into the nightmare of, is to dismantle this polarized, one-sided belief system and instead look at where is the opposite equally true. So how is me not being the primary caregiver, or whatever the opposite is for you? Like, don't pick my words, pick whatever the opposite belief is for you. So you have a belief that my children are better when I'm the one who meets their needs all of the time.
Or, when I'm the one who puts the baby to bed all the time, or when I'm the one who gets up through the night, or when I'm the one who sits with the tears, or, whatever it is that you feel like your identity is probably most wrapped in.
Great. Then ask yourself, what is the opposite of that? Probably, what is the thing I judge in others? What is the thing I would never allow myself to do because it clashes with my ideals? Then ask yourself, what is the benefit to my child or children of that very thing? Because the truth is both exist. There is a conservation of equal drawbacks and benefits to everything. And you are still living in a cage if you are not actively able to emotionally balance those two sides and choose in an empowered way. You're still reacting.
You're still being run by the outside of you.
So it's really important that you balance your perception that they're better off.
Yeah.
Because arguably they're not.
Which is sometimes the most insulting thing to consider, because what do you mean all of that dedication and effort and focus I've shown, does not necessarily ring true.
Yeah.
And it's funny what I notice this in myself and also working with so many women is that underneath what we perceive to be problems with our child or the dynamic with our children or how we feel in mothering is actually the vulnerability that it takes to confront the fantasies that we've brought to it. Like to confront the fantasy that we had about ourselves and who we would be and how we would show up, which is creating often like the nightmare in the relationship with our children of us yelling or them not wanting to spend time with us or them pushing back or, you know, insert thing that's most triggering. How is that triggering thing actually underneath it all, us having to face the truth of ourselves, the messy truth of all of us.
Truth.
Right?
Yeah, truth.
It's a deep work. And I think the longer that we mother, the more we, you know, we get more of a full color experience. And therefore we have to lean in and love those edges.
Yeah.
We also
our children have to have a full experience of the mother, right? Because what happens if they don't?
Exactly. Yeah. Like they actually have to think that we did things wrong.
Yeah.
Right. And if we are attached to how they view us, then that's really hard. That's a lot for a relationship to take in terms of a responsibility.
It's so hard. And, you know, I'll just say, I mean, I've said this to you before, Bridget, but just for our listeners' heart's sake, is me, who has an incredibly difficult and possibly lifelong challenging relationship with my mother, because that void is so huge. It's been a major driver for all of my life choices, really, and is also equally the birthplace of my value system. So it's this real hard tussle, because part of me wants to hate her, but I only hate her and rally against her when I'm in my hurting, wounded child. Because when I'm more connected to who I am as an adult and can love the perfect mother that I had for everything that she created in me and for the life that I've led, she's my perfect mother, right? So it's this real tussle between I hate her and I love her and I hate her and I love her. It's a very tenuous relationship. And in amongst all of that is the recognition of her own trauma and the lineage that she has come from, and the experience that I have always craved. Please see me, please acknowledge my pain, please, like all of the things that you and I value as a parent. Please
and I remember
listen to me cry.
Yeah, and in fact, it was funny. You think you said in one of the podcasts, like when you first met me and you saw how I was with Hugo, she's like, I just wanted you to be my mother.
I probably did say that, because I'm like so gagging for the mother.
Right? Like you're craving that. And so, of course, in that wounded inner child moment that we all go back to in various ways on various days, you know, like your mother could never do enough for you, right?
Never, right?
That child was unseen.
Yeah. So still as a 40-year-old adult, there's still this part of me that I recognize just wants to be seen by her, just wants all of the pain and the abuse that she did to me acknowledged. So when we look at the perception of, you know, a whole mother, that you don't want to have a one-sided version of she was so perfect, is the recognition that our children will hate us for something. Whatever we perceive we're doing right now will, for at least one of our children, be the wrong choice in their eyes and their views and their perception and their life choices. So to balance the pain and the suffering that we perceive in that, and potentially the overcompensation for trying to avoid the thing that is inevitable, what I like to be able to remember is, despite all of the complexity of my own wound, if my mother turned around to me today, so at 40-something, and sat down with the same level of intention that Bridget would hold, and the same open heart and the same willingness to have her own ego opened and shattered, like it's this authentic but held vulnerability, not weeping mess, like, but not fight. There's nothing for me to fight. I love you. I love you. I love you. Like just holding that wholeness, and said, I know I did these things to you and I know it hurt you in these ways, and I'm really sorry. Tell me how I can love you today. I mean, it would all be wiped away. All of that. Like, I can't, like, so much abuse, like being physically beaten on the floor till I can't even speak. Like, huge, huge abuse.
Yeah.
And even now, if she said that to me today, gone. So when I think about being the mother of my children who one day will need that from me, I'm not afraid of it.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't mean anything about me. All I can do in my everyday is continue to live in the greatest alignment that I can, and to make the choices that current evolution of me, based on her beliefs and her views and her mindset and what she knew of the world and herself and her trauma, could do. Then I can say to my children, I see you. Yeah. I did the best that I could, and still it hurt you. And I'm sorry. Tell me the ways that it hurt you. I want to hear them. And then tell me how I can love you now. Like, I know as that hurt child, that's all I would need. And I know as the mother, I can give that. So therefore, there's nothing for me to run from.
Yeah.
Right?
It gives you more permission to be the authentic mother who sometimes is going to choose other things over your children.
Yeah.
Right. Because you know that in some way that they'll be okay with that. They might not think that they are. Right.
Yeah.
But that you're also going to hold your heart wide open if and when they come to you and say, you know, that time when I was 12 and you did or didn't do this thing.
Yeah.
Right. Like you're not so fragile that you can't hear that, or that you can't validate their experience as being their experience without having to defend yourself.
Exactly. And I'm fairly sure that all of us who listen to this podcast and are involved in it do just that. So there's nothing to fear. Right? There's no problem with your children having voids and pain and suffering and challenge. There's no problem with that, because you can meet it anytime. And you always have opportunities to do that. And in fact, the other day, I had an inward chuckle to myself because the younger two were at school and kinder, and my big kids had a day off school. And so they were home with me. And something had happened. I can't remember what. I think I'd had some work shit going down, like some like tech stuff, and stuff wasn't working. And I'd gotten really like, you know, when you get irritated and angry about it, and I'm like, and so I've come out of, you know, my bedroom. I can't remember what it was now, but something wasn't working, carrying this irritation in my body.
Stomping around the house.
Right, stomping, right. And so I walk out, and before I'd got into do whatever I was doing, I'd said to them, can you put your washing away? Can you know, whatever it was, a few things. I walk out, of course, none of that shit is done, because Bridget, time does not happen upon you, time is created.
Yes.
So
wasn't a priority.
No, it wasn't a priority. They would rather be on their screens doing Minecraft or whatever the other thing was that they, you know, Heath's thing of choice at the moment. So I walked out and saw none of the stuff was done. Well, what do you reckon I did with that ball of irritation? Yeah. I was like, you know, and I just like stomped around the house, just like spraying off like a firework all of the shit that was in my body over my children. And of course, they're teenagers now. So they just look at me like they're both seething. And in the back of my head, I'm like, you know what you're doing right now? And I'm like, yes, I do. I'm trying. You know, so it was this like real push-pull of just down, oh my God, and you know, whatever. And what I had planned to do with them was, once I got off that call, we were going to go for a lovely walk together and spend some connected time together. But of course, I didn't want to be around them. They didn't want to be around me. So my whole fantasy of this perfect afternoon of being this connected mother, gone. And I'd fucked it. It was me. And so I calm myself down. I've removed myself from the room, calm myself down, I come back out, and it's a quiet house. So the two of them have fucked off together and taken the dog for a walk and not told me, because that's the perfect fuck you, right?
Routine.
Yes. I've taken the dog for a walk. And I had that moment right here where I giggled, and I thought, oh, fuck me. Here they are, by virtue of me playing the perfect antagonist, loving super hard on each other, having a super connected experience together, moving their bodies out in the sunshine, talking and listening and holding space for each other, no doubt about what a bitch their mum is.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter because what they're achieving, is exactly what I wanted them to have.
Connection just wasn't with you.
Right. And yet I'm part of that dynamic. And so I could see that play out. And actually what I saw was the beauty in that. There was no part of me judging myself for that because I could see the perfection and it doesn't have to be all me.
Yeah.
It's better if it's not. What is one of the main things I want for my children is a super connected sibling relationship because that will serve them for the rest of their lives long after I'm not here. And I never had that thing. It was missing for me. I want them to have it, which may mean to some extent I have to remove connection in order for them to have connection because there's always a law of conservation. So all of this played out, and then I made dinner and we sat down to have dinner, and I apologized. And so I said to them, you know, I know today that I took my shit out on both of you and I just vomited it all over you. And they both looked at me at the table and they smirked. And then they did the eye thing with each other, like they'd already communicated about, they already knew that was exactly what I'd done. You know?
That's CC.
Yeah. And I was like, I know, I did that. It was, you know, it was wrong. All of the things. And they were both like, yeah, you did. We know. That's cool. Let's move on. And back connection again. And I was like, how wonderful is this? That we can't always be the ones in there. And yet the very thing we want for them is happening.
That's so great. I do love that. And I think it's such a great, I think, weight off the shoulders of so many mothers who are so committed to conscious parenting and holding space is to be able to see that connection is conserved. So if in a moment that's missing between you and your child, like in that example that you gave, Jules, then where has it gone in the family? Because it's not missing. And what is the value of where it's gone, for example, in that sibling relationship? There's value of it being there. And there's also value of our children seeing us not cope emotionally.
So it's also full circle back to the whole mother. Be a whole human.
Yeah.
I'm flawed. I'm angry. I'm messy. I love relationship and I fuck relationship. Like all.
And also when who steps back, so when you like tap out or can't deal, who steps up? Right? Like even today, like Sylvie sometimes needs an enormous amount of scaffolding to get out the door. And I was off my A game today and I didn't give it to her. And if I don't give it to her and I'm feeling anxious or stressed about being late, then I can't always hold it very well. And so I cracked it and like walked off into my room, slammed the door, cried and said, I just hate being late. Why do we always have to be late? Did my own process. And at that exact same time, as I veered into my room to get myself like last done, my husband veered to after Sylvie and helped get her ready in the most gentlest, directional way that she needed, that I couldn't provide in that moment because I was gone. Like I had held as much as I could, and then I couldn't hold anymore because her resistance met with my anxiety and stress, and so I was no longer had the capacity. And so the beautiful thing about that is that her connection and her needs got met by her dad, which is really important to me because those emotional and connecting needs were not really met for me with my dad. So I love seeing those imprints happen for her.
So again, you're not feeling guilty because you can actually see how it's serving the very thing you want for her.
Yeah. And then we also had a half an hour drive in which I could repair with her, in which I could explain what happened. I reached around, I held her hand, I apologized for yelling, and it was a beautiful connection point. Like we don't get to have those beautiful reparative experiences unless we sometimes lose our shit. Right? Like it's almost like how like muscles grow stronger when they're stretched and torn and, all of that. I think that that's true with relationship. Like we need the conflict because an element of healthy conflict helps build a strong relationship. It helps build
a healthy human too.
Healthy human, right? More permission to be whole. Because, in our value of holding space for our kids, so much of the time we can not judge their feelings and let them be, right? Like as my husband was saying earlier, before all this shit hit the fan, he was like, Sylvia, it's okay to be angry in this house. It's fine, but I don't want you to hit your iPad. We want to have a full experience of feeling in this home. And to have that means everybody in this home gets to have that full experience of feeling. And therefore, everybody else in this home also has to be responsible for their piece in that and how they can come back into connection with those that they love.
Just love it. Thank you so much, Bridgie, for all your wisdom. I just always feel mothered up. It's so true.
And I think it's really permission giving for our listeners to hear our stories of like fuck up, right?
Yeah.
And then seeing the wisdom.
Wholeness. Yeah. You can have all of the philosophies you like, but the human lived experience is somewhat different.
Yeah.
Actually, I saw this fantastic reel. I put it up on my stories today of this like rope, whoever the rock climbing people are that use the ropes to like scale up rocks, whatever you call that. Is that? I don't know. I have no idea. Whatever all of the rope stuff is. So there's this dude on the rope and he's like got all of the equipment and all of the ropes and he's scaling up this face of this rock. And he's got his camera out because he just veers right. And here is this monk without anything, just walking up the rocks in bare feet, just on his toes.
Whoa.
Right. And so the caption is something around skill versus experience. And I loved it because I was like, yeah, this is the difference. Like you can have all of the intellectual fucking rope tools that you like, all of the suspender belts, the fancy latest helmet equipment, like you can kit yourself out and you can say, I am like killing it, best person at this job. And then you see the person who has lived experience and they don't need any of that roping system.
It kind of reminds me of like, the teacher who's the expert parent until they can become a parent.
Yeah.
Right? Like I've had teacher friends who say, oh God, I had all these ideas about how I was going to be a parent. I would never do what I've seen, parents do or be. And they get so humbled because experience is a great teacher and leveler and, ultimately too, a skill builder in a way that like having a latest equipment is not.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a real difference between lived wisdom and intellectually learning something.
Yeah.
And wisdom will always have a very balanced mix of the knowing of suffering and the ability to rise above it. Or with it, maybe perhaps is the better way of saying it. Very different. So just really giving yourself permission to move from a philosophy and a set of learned tools into what that looks like as a lived whole experience.
Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful reminder.
And what do you have going on in the world, Bridgie?
It's your last chance to get into Disrupt, Revealing the Mother Wound, which really I think for any person who's on a conscious parenting journey is almost like a prerequisite to really allow yourself to become this whole mother that we talk about here. Because if we don't want to examine that which we carry about our mother, about what it means to be a mother, about what we've internalized from our culture about mothering, then we can end up in a really sticky place in ourselves and our identity and end up run so much by our past. So that's my invitation to you if you feel like you're willing to do that kind of work. And so we start with our first live integration call this week on Thursday. So you can find out more about that at bridgetwood.life. And what about you, Jules?
Queen School. So Queen School is open for the next 2 weeks for enrolment. So it's the full 4-module online self-paced program combined with 12 months in Honey Club, where I stretch that integration and guidance on how to move it from a learned tool into a lived experience of wisdom that actually becomes a change, as Bridget would say, change agent for you in your life. So you can find out more about Queen School at julietenner.love.
Beautiful. Remember to nourish the woman to rock the family.
And we'll see you next week when we continue to peel back the layers on your mothering journey.
Thank you so much for listening. We literally couldn't do this without you. Please share this podcast with anyone you think it would be medicine for.
If you desire to integrate your learnings practically and supportively into your life, then head on over to bridgetwood.life or julietenner.love to go deeper.
And if you feel like giving back a little to this free content, please rate us on iTunes or Facebook, all of which helps the podcast reach more mamas who need this type of tonic for the soul.